Welcome to the BXG Podcast, the podcast where pop culture and nerd culture meet.
You think it's just going to be barbecue sauce?
Because if you actually read those books, it's just gobbledygook.
I really think clothes should be mandatory.
Speaking of Star Wars,
Captain America.
trailer reaction video.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
This is indeed the way to the Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 4, Chapter 20, The Foundling, which is kind of a double entendre if you think about it. This episode was written by Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau and directed by none other than Action Jackson himself, Carl Weathers.
Hell yeah.
And obviously we have Pedro Pascal as Din Djarin the Mandalorian, Katie Sackhoff as Bo-Katan Kryze, Emily Swallow as the Armorer, Tate Fletcher as Paz Vizsla.
Yeah, Paz Vizsla.
That's the big one. Wesley Kimmel as Ragnar the Foundling. Is he Jimmy Kimmel's? His father is writer, director, producer Jonathan Kimmel.
Oh, the Kimmels.
Is there? I don't know. This is actually his, this particular child actor's second Star Wars series. He also played Tusken Kid in the Book of Boba Fett. But I would say the biggest, the biggest casting thing here is Ahmad Best as Kelleran Beck, the Jedi who saves a certain little someone in a flashback sequence. Ahmad Best, of course, best known for the role of Jar Jar Binks. So, redemption.
A redemption arc.
For Ahmad Best. Good to have him back in the fold. I never really liked him and Jake Lloyd bearing the brunt of bad writing and bad direction with those prequel things. That wasn't their fault. They were just actors doing a job, you know.
And also, one of them was a child.
One of them was a child. That was accurate.
I felt like that's weird.
Yeah. Shorter. This episode was a little bit on the shorter side. We'll get into spoilers. Obviously, we kind of spoiled one of the things already, which I apologize for if you didn't know any of that. But I think two pretty important. I think there was a lot of developments in this episode. Yeah, I also want to actually before we get into the non-spoiler section, we both disliked the last episode.
And so did most other people.
A lot of people did, and we received some comments on that video on YouTube channel, and the person basically said, I disagree with you. This is why I thought it was good. No offense. And I responded and said, none taken. If you're going to be respectful.
Right. Yeah.
If you're going to be respectful and actually have a conversation, please do.
Perfect.
Please comment. Don't come in there and go, you guys are fucking idiots. Like, that's whatever. I'm just going to ignore it. But if you come and have a differing opinion and you want to discuss that opinion, good. That's awesome.
Right.
And I think that's something that I hate this term, but the fandom of Star Wars needs more just like, hey, let's have a conversation about why you like this and why I don't, and we can either agree to disagree or meet in the middle, whatever, versus I like the prequels and the originals and the sequels suck, so you're an asshole for liking the sequels. I do want to tell you are an asshole, by the way. Not for liking the sequels, because I think you have to share the same opinion, just in general.
Right.
But, you know, have good conversations. That's part of the reason we're doing this, is to try to build a community of people who want to have good conversations. But with all that being said,
Right.
spoiler-free thoughts on Chapter 20, The Foundling, Episode 4 of Season 2.
I felt like this was like a reset to like what we kind of needed. Not like a full on, reset, but like the idea of we get to get back to just the Mandalorian. And we saw some things that showcased what a Mandalorian is, what it's about. And then we get a little Grogu backstory, which is fun. And the fact that they did this in really like a 26-minute episode when you cut out stuff. I mean, this episode felt way more like impactful than the last episode that was however long, 55 minutes. This episode felt like it had much more going on than that episode. You're literally talking about a 30-minute difference with double the content. Like, I walked away from this episode thinking, wow, a lot happened. How was that only 20-some minutes compared to the other episode where it's like nothing happened? Why was that, 50 whatever minutes? So I think this righted the ship, because I like I said, I think we weren't the only ones that necessarily thought the way we thought that episode. So for me, it was definitely a positive and maybe more of a direction. I think this season might be going more towards, we thought it was going to be like, oh, is he going to become a Mandalorian? I think it's more about what the lore of Mandalorian, what the lore of being a Mandalorian is now, which is cool. I think that's cool, like that origin of like, because we don't really know what it is, but when Fett shows up, and, and then we get, Din Djarin, and so we have these different people that show up, we don't really know the lore of it. And I think seeing that, I mean, I thought ending was super cool. Like I felt like I was reading a book while watching it because it was so impactful. But yeah, I thought this episode righted the ship. It wasn't a great episode, but it was a very good episode.
Yeah, I'm trying to check Rotten Tomatoes audience scores for the different episodes, but my Chrome is not working for me. I thought that you make a really good point that it almost seems like outside of the extended side story that we got in last week's episode, that this is delving into like the lore of Mandalore and the Mandalorian people and stuff like that. And that's really quite interesting. And the flashback also was very interesting, and it was cool, and I think it put to bed a lot of different conspiracy theories that was out there, that were out there. And I just, we'll get into it in spoilers, but there's a certain thing that if it happens, it's going to be cuteness overload, and I don't know if I can handle it. We'll talk about that in the spoilers, but I thought that there were some really good action sequences. I thought that there were some really good special effects sequences, which is interesting because you and I had talked privately, or off air, I guess not privately, but like off air about how it was interesting that
Big Brother is always watching.
Well, yeah, sure. It was pretty interesting that Marvel let go of the person in charge of their like visual effects and special effects.
Right.
This very week after, I thought two visually stunning sequences in last week's episode with the battle, the dogfighting with the different space, the TIE fighters and her ship and his ship and etc. And then them on the rocket ships or the rocket packs, which that had to take some inspiration from the Rocketeer, right? I mean, some.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely. Yeah.
But it looks so goddamn cool it looks really cool. I thought it looked really cool when they were like wide shot and show them like maneuvering through the canyon and stuff like that. But again, I don't want to spoil too much.
I mean, we could probably jump into spoilers.
Let's go ahead and do that.
This is a hard episode to talk without. Honestly, I feel like
they kind of all are, I guess. But yeah, spoilers. If Grogu gets a little Mandalorian helmet, I don't know that I'm going to be able to handle it because it's going to
Neither will the internet, right?
Yeah, it'll shatter. Like Star Wars Twitter will actually explode like the fucking Death Star.
Yeah. When she made him the thing to protect him,
Yeah,
however thing, I was like, that's the next thing. Like, that's the next Grogu, whatever. Stuffy,
yeah.
Funko, like, holy
for
cow,
sure.
the internet.
Definitely. Outside of that though, what stuck out to you now that we can talk a little bit more freely about this episode?
My favorite part was honestly like the very beginning before we even get the Mandalorian thing where it's the training sequence. But I also love a training sequence. Like you give me a sports movie and it's like practice or anything like that. Like give it to me. Inject it into my. You could have a whole movie.
That's what she said.
And I'd be like, just have that. It's it's the Top Gun like shirtless guys, playing volleyball or everyone involved playing that football game that they were playing in Top Gun Maverick. Like I love a thing like that where it's just the bonding thing. So I thought that was really cool. But for me, because this episode was so short, it was just like it almost felt like they meant to make this look awesome the entire time. Like the idea was like it wasn't action all the time, but something was happening the entire time. So the beginning was really, it set me up so well. Like I was just like, oh my god, like yes, give me this. This is gonna be a good episode, and it was right. I mean, it ended up being a good episode because of that beginning. You can definitely see where they were going. So for me, it was probably just to understand it. Like they're on they're practicing essentially. They're getting better at their craft, and so for me, that was probably my favorite part. That and just Grogu just kind of doing his thing, like that sequence where he's getting helped and just in his little I don't know what that hoverboat. I don't know what that is, but
It's like a Star Wars stroller.
yeah, it's cool. So I like that too because that was cute.
There was a lot. There have been a lot of theories, a lot of conspiracy theories, a lot of wild guesses as to who rescues him from Order 66, which Tamora Morrison appears as the clone troopers. He's cast as the clone troopers. All the clone troopers are him from as he was Jango Fett, and they've made that change now that all of the clone troopers and everything are him. So he was technically in this episode as well, who, Boba Fett, but he's also a clone. Yada, yada, yada. Anyway, I thought that this was kind of I felt like this was kind of an interesting choice for them to sort of, I don't know if this particular Jedi has any lore like within the Clone Wars cartoons or anything like that Ahmad Best comes back and portrays. But I know a lot of people thought that there was a chance it could have been Cal Kestis, who's the protagonist of the Jedi Fallen Order video game, and then Jedi Survivor coming soon, which that sounded really pluggy. I didn't mean for it to sound that way. I mean, I'm going to play it, but we're not getting any.
Sure, right. Yet.
Yeah.
Yet.
Some people thought it was maybe even Yoda, that, other different Jedi here or there, whatever. So I kind of thought that was kind of an interesting choice to go with someone who's either a new character or probably pretty widely unknown. But I thought it was cool, and it was cool to kind of see Ahmad Best get that sort of redemption arc and kind of come back into the universe in a positive way. And I think that everything I've seen, by and large, has been very positive about that. That sequence, though, leaves me wanting more of that story, because we know that Grogu is 50. We know that it was 20 years, I think, between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. And so And then obviously the events of the original trilogy and the Mandalorian takes place after the fall of, like, the beginning of the fall of the Empire, as things are kind of more disparate parts and you have these sort of regional warlords and stuff like that. So maybe that's another 5 years, whatever. But what's he been doing? You know what I mean? What's he been doing for the last week? I mean, obviously he's baby Yoda, but what's he been up to? And so that left that, and I think that that's a good thing. It left me wanting more of that in particular. And I would add that the Bo-Katan stuff is interesting because it's almost like a reverse Dances with Wolves thing. You know what I mean? Where she made the choice to leave. She left. Whoop. And there, fella. She made the choice to leave, and now she's coming back, and she's adhering to the creed that she never has. Well, not never has, but hasn't in a very long time. And seeing, you know, she's talking to the armor about the mythosaur and everything. And yeah, I thought it was a very good episode. I thought, like you said, a lot of important developments happened. I think going back to last week, now having sat on it for a week, I don't dislike that storyline. I dislike how it was done.
Right. Yeah,
I think
right.
that if they would have broken that up as ancillary, you know,
Over the course of like 3 episodes.
Yeah. Just, you know, because eventually what was there is going to be important, but I almost feel like, okay, we spent this time on this story. Now we're coming to this episode where we're not spending any time on that story. Where is that all going to come in at? And I think that for the sake of the viewer, you want to stretch that out a little bit rather than just hit him over the head all at once, because this episode didn't have any of that. This was, like you said, it was strictly the Mandalorian. But anyway, I don't have a sense. This is, I guess, the exciting thing now is I really don't have a sense for where this is going. The quest is complete.
Right. Yeah.
You know, he did what he needed to do to rejoin the creed. He's no longer an outcast. So, like, now what? You know, and
It feels like there's some sort of backstabbing going on. I'm just saying, like, that feels like where it has to go, where somebody does something.
This is Star Wars. So I don't think there's going to be any, like, real nefarious.
Is Palpatine going to show up this out of nowhere for no reason?
Somehow he's back. Let's not talk about that. I don't have a firm idea of where this is headed, and that is exciting for me.
Yeah, same. I like that. I like that we don't know.
Right. Next,
this is the way.
This is. Oh, they said that a lot this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot.
Well,
I feel like it's
that's the way.
I feel
that's
like
the way.
It's almost it's almost an Aragorn Army of the Dead situation. Like, we don't know what to say here. This is the way.
This is the way. Yep.
It's like, I don't want to say it's lazy writing, but it's
definitely something
convenient.
It's definitely something to be working in an environment where you like work with you have to talk to a lot of your coworkers.
Yeah.
And something happens. You're like, well, this is the way. You know? Way. Yeah. Like, everyone's in on the joke now. Like, your boss is just like real weird about stuff. And she's like, what the hell happened there? You're like, this is the way. And then it's almost like throwing shade.
Yeah, maybe. I find a shocking amount of people that I've worked with over the 3+ season or the 3 seasons it's been on. Not a lot of people watch this, actually. That I've worked with, you know.
Like, kids in my class, kids in my class's parents watch it, but I don't really interact with them.
Sure.
So,
I don't. I am the resident nerd of everywhere I've ever worked. So.
Oh, yeah. I'm not necessarily the resident nerd, but I've definitely been the resident, like, Star Wars person. And I'm not even, like, that big of a Star Wars person. I love Star Wars, but I'm like the person that can tell you every little thing. Like, I read an article today about this episode, and I was like, I don't know what any of this is. Right. Like, you know, it's referencing like TV shows that like you can't even access anymore, and I'm like, okay. Which is cool. I like that.
Yeah, so much
I think that's awesome.
wrapped up in the Clone Wars and stuff, and I know that they're supposed to be really good, but I just can't. I can't do it. And I know people will say, you're missing out. Open your mind. It's like, listen, I get it. I know that they're really, really good.
Yeah.
I just can't. I can't do it.
But it's like a lot of things where it's like there's so much stuff now,
Yeah.
and it's so hard like to commit to something else, and it's not. Yeah.
I think
But
if it was new, and I could follow it
yeah.
like week to week, I could probably
Yeah.
do that, but like
It feels daunting.
there's like 7 or 8 seasons or something like that.
That's what's crazy, like how many seasons of some of these things are.
Yeah.
And it's like 20 episodes. You're like,
Yeah.
the absolute F? Like,
Right.
are you kidding me right now? Like, I gotta watch. I don't know, but I feel like sometimes saying F has more impact. Where it's like, what the F? Is there 160 episodes of this you want me to catch up with? Well, you got your weekend.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well,
I feel like,
I
yeah.
can't remember if it was a kid that I was working with. Yeah. There was a kid. He's like, yep, I'm watching One Piece. There's like 1,400 episodes of that show.
I was saying, aren't there like a ton of episodes?
Like, okay, good fucking weapons.
Almost
When you're
10.
30, you know? But anyway, The Mandalorian. So there's that.
Mandalorian.